Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you very much to stay with us. It's really a pleasure. I'm really happy to stay with this amazing group of friends, guys, and wherever we are, people from South America, from Canada, from the States, from Germany, from Spain. And so this is amazing. I can see people from India in the chat as well. So it's really an amazing ecosystem. So it's really great. And we are men, women, so we try to create, let's say, a real world of what's going on. Only men are using the technology, and this is not true. Okay, so only a brief introduction about what is the purpose of this panel. So many of you maybe think that we are going to talk about augmented reality, and this is not the purpose of that. AR is not the meaning of the augmented reality. It's a new education ecosystem for the augmented society. We are talking about the new approach for the learning world, where we are talking about the integration of emerging technologies in education, like artificial intelligence that is growing very, very fast. Robotics, something that is quite new, is human twins, because when you are an avatar, you are human twins at the end. And the new immersive ecosystem with science, art, culture, life science, philosophy. So augmented education, from my point of view, is a new jump, and we have to make it faster, or the community will be really confused about this kind of technologies. So it's a space for reflection, to learn, experiment, learn, create new experiences, and how to integrate and to transport to a new space around before it changes. So the thing is that we want to be the leaders of this transformation, of these changes. So we need to understand first the rules of this game, where maybe sometimes we are running too fast without knowing the reason why, and stop a while and say, hey, we need to establish a roadmap, a guide where ethics, personal security, identity will be saved. And this is something that today is really tricky with a lot of devices that are getting information from your side, like Internet of Behaviors or the personal assurance and so on. So we need to understand really the ecosystem, how we can use it and provide value in the thing that this is not a competition. This is our future, and we do need to share the biggest benefit for all in this global community. So let's start in this direction. And I will ask to Paula, please, can you share us about your experience during this last year and until today and tomorrow, yesterday, sorry, but yes, the last year is growing and growing.
I'm with Living Pop-Ups, and we focus on creating augmented reality for education, particularly related around books. And we had two major events go on with our company. It's hard, but it gave us a chance to hunker down and redesign a lot of our content based upon what's going on today. And we realized that we really needed to add context for required readers, the classics, to make them relevant today. And that's really what we do, is we looked at taking classic books, adding AR in such a way that they're still valuable today. We deal with very important issues about diversity, about why certain words may be in Huckleberry Finn and what does that mean for everybody and how to relate to that. So it was in some ways a very painful time for our company because it slowed everything down, but it gave us a chance to really reinvent what we're doing.
Yeah, sure. And Florence, I saw that during the last year you have been moving a lot around South America. So I think you can share your perspective about the impact of COVID in education in that region.
Yes, of course. I think that for one side, it was like an advantage, the pandemic, because in Latin America, we were like a step behind regarding these technologies. So the pandemic like forced the society and the culture to start knowing what is immersive technology, start knowing about virtual spaces. They started to change the way they shop and learn. So in one side, it was like an advantage to accelerate all these behaviors. But also right now I'm seeing that it's very difficult for students and also education institutions to change the way they were learning in physical spaces to move this like practice to the virtual spaces. So for us, it's like a challenge to provide like specific tools that can really help not only the students but also the teachers. No, I think that we are in a process of learning which are the best way of helping the students.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, there are a lot of lessons learned during this time, and I think that we have to focus on that. And Julie, well, we have to change because Tilly is not with us, so we are all going to open all the session from the past to the, because I know that you have been very active in Canada and in other countries about this. Can you share your experience with us, please?
Sure. I think something that you said just when you first started talking, I think was really important, is that this is not a competition out there at all right now, and collaboration and how we all work together and share these ideas is so important moving forward, and taking templates of what's being done in classrooms and putting together packages and putting those into resources of where students, educators, education systems can start to feed off of that, because there's so many things to change. And I'm in the Greater Toronto area here in Ontario. A couple of days ago, they announced our kids were not going back to school this year. I think my kids may have seen the inside of a classroom for real no more than a month or two throughout this entire school year. So, as a parent, I'm here saying to the Ontario government, okay, what's your plan here? Because the skills gap is growing so deep and so far, so wide. I'm fortunate. I've got a couple of brilliant girls up there that, have got it. They understand how to connect, but they're still not applying these new skill sets into the classroom. So I really wanted to emphasize this whole collaboration piece of coming together. And obviously, an education forum like this, while it's just today, these kind of conversations need to keep happening to be able to help us all advance together, because there is so much to learn. One of the things that I'm focused on is something we've never taught before, is spatial design, and that depth and dimension of creativity that we all have in us because we experience it every day. And how do we apply that to the technologies that are coming out, the immersive experiences? How do we build the immersive experiences during the attention economy when the kids right now are so focused on so many other things other than the classroom? So there's a lot to work together. I think one of the biggest lessons for me over this past year has been the sense of collaboration, and the fact that there's no boundaries of borders. And the greatest thing I think is being able to reach out to somebody in Africa or Spain or the United States and feel like they're in our own classroom and we're all learning together. So I think that, as far as what I've learned the best is to keep promoting that, because that's the only way a re-education system is going to move forward, because there are so many changes to be made.
Yeah, absolutely, Julie, absolutely. Well, I have a question for you, Heather. I think, I don't think, I will ask you, but do you think that all these changes and all these words, talks, and experiences that we are managing in our, let's say, cycles, experts, or whatever, have a real impact in the teachers community, in the education community, in the administration, and how you feel that the parents can leverage this, if they have an idea or not, because sometimes I got the perception that we are moving in cycles, and it's very difficult to move outside this environment.
Oh, thank you. We see it as a space where there are pervasive interfaces, right? So the students have data and learning interfaces at home. There's a layer of data on everything that they see. And the availability of experts, I think the pandemic has actually opened up access to a lot of people that were more difficult to access before. Parents have a lot of resources. I teach in the graduate level at higher education, so I don't interact with parents on that level very often. But something interesting that Paula said that I think is really important is that we have pervasive presence, pervasive data, and we're pulling value out of that, and the power of dimensional design, of course, we do that, but also the stories and the narratives that used to be other stories, as in classics, we're now able to make them become visceral, and they become our own stories instead of the stories of others, which enhances the learning. And as we're training people on these tools, we're also training people on how to think about this and what it means about being inclusive, and how do we bring in, as Florencia said, we have a digital divide on one hand, and on the other hand, we have potential for pervasive access for students. So it's really, again, challenging also, as you mentioned, Carlos, with ethics. You have pervasive access, which also means we know where you are, we know what you think, we know your preferences, we know how you move in the morning differently than in the evening. So I think that all of these things are exciting, and we're wrapped up in trying to juggle many balls at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. Well, now we can talk about the experiences in Europe. Before the COVID, there was a big plan to modernize and digitalize the European Union in different schools, vocational training centers, institutions, and there were a lot of pilot projects, very, very impressive. But if you see a bit what's going on during the last year and a half, you can see that almost all the projects were stopped. And this is terrible, because there were a lot of money, a lot of investment, and a lot of effort and passion for those projects. So, Philip, can you share your experience? What do you think about that? And if we are going to recover this powerful situation, because one thing that we can promote from Europe is the idea of standards, of collaboration, in theory, but this is something that we move forward very, very fast. What do you think about?
Well, I mean, I was teaching throughout the pandemic. It's a vocational training school here in Germany. It's actually a franchise called the Miami Ad School, and I've been teaching everything from game design to the history of advertising to students that actually come from all over the world. We have students from Thailand, from South America, from Nigeria. And in the end, the online education actually worked incredibly well. Our mentors, our teachers really put out the effort to put in content that could be reusable, that they could access at any given time, whether it's depending on time zones. I mean, just the complication of time zones alone to scheduling classes, what a freaking nightmare. I think the downside is, of course, these small classrooms that, are training, just a group of students where collaboration is key. Finding the right tools has always been really tricky. I mean, it's not like, everyone can afford a freaking headset, These things are very expensive hardware that we're talking about. So I ended up using like Gather Town, where I could collaborate like in a spatial audio version with my students, so that I could talk with different groups on different projects here and there. And, on top of the Zoom meetings and top of like, personal tutorials with students, as well as online video recordings, you have a wealth of, different content that you can provide now, at least for the creative industry that I work in, whether it be technical or marketing or, concepting or writing, that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. It sounds great. Well, Tyler just came from the future, and now I think it's a good moment to start talking about the future. So, Tyler, how you see, because again, let me start again talking about this concept. Maybe I'm a really bit rude. Augmented education, okay? Because we are always trying to make to apply the technology in the old scenarios, how trying to substitute something. But I think if we have something different, if we want to increase and if we want to create value, and we have to change the rules for the new society, we need to jump into the future really with this concept of augmented education. Okay. Give us your perception about, imagine we are going to talk about the future that we can manage, okay? Not to
Sure.
2025 or, sorry, 25. Let's say in 5 years' time, what can we do, or how you can see the evolution of the technology in the education sector?
Yeah, I would say that the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, and so the problems with that are that we have an awareness on how to use the technologies effectively, but it can be very difficult to sort of retroactively apply them to a structure that was just holistically not built to employ these types of technologies. It kind of gets all the way down to we oftentimes ask ourselves the question why a lot. That leads into lots of discovery and invention. And you really if you ask the question, why do we gather in physical spaces for education? Well, I mean, in many ways, the reason for that is because of the limitation of the technological system to deliver information. So the book, the written word, we needed to sort of gather into physical spaces around the ideas of the book so that we could understand. Whereas with immersive technologies, we can gather anywhere and recognize the same sort of values out of sort of acquiring the information. Now, there's lots of other values about being in person physically in terms of relationship and connection and those things that certainly contribute to the learning environment. But I think what's sort of odd right now is we have this capability and this technology to almost completely subvert the way that we deliver education, yet we're trying to sort of take this methodology and retroactively apply it to the system that it wasn't built for in the first place. And so you see this uneven distribution of the capability, where you have some institutions who are willing to sort of throw caution to the wind and invest heavily into immersive technologies. I just yesterday was doing a class that was my second time in a row for NYU, where they essentially bring in, it's the coolest class I can think of. They bring in 30 to 35 of the top executives of all of the immersive technology companies just to help students understand what's out there. And the fact that it takes the gathering of 35 executives in order for one class to understand, it demonstrates that the system itself is not thinking about how to truly integrate these technologies in meaningful ways, and also that the system is still yet reluctant to sort of push into virtualized technologies, not just because they can help us in times where we have to be physically distant, but because of the core principles, the core tenets of immersive technology, which I would say real simply put is embodiment and the ability to deliver sort of individualization at scale. And that's perfect for education. We want to put people in the awareness of what they're learning, not just that they're sitting at their computers, at their desk, looking at a computer screen and taking in information in that way. We take in that information and path it in our memories as sort of random access memory or semantic memory when we do it that way. But when we learn in an immersive context where we have awareness of our body, whether it's through augmented reality or virtual reality, it doesn't matter. When we do that, we engender a different kind of relationship to the information. And that helps us learn it faster and learn it with more comprehension and more awareness and more ability to recall for further, longer distances down the road. But it takes a sort of a full adoption of those capabilities. And I would say, Carlos, instead of trying to sort of take a VR headset and apply it to the classroom, it really causes us to need to ask the question, why do we gather in this way? Should we change the way that we gather so that we can make it appeal and adhere to the capabilities of the technology in a more effective way? And I think until we really do that, we're going to be kind of stuck in this space where we're just trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And there's lots of frustration with that. So in the near term, in the next year to 2 years, I think what you'll see is the gap, this gap widening in terms of where this type of capability is being not just tested and being done in trial run, but where it is in full force use. And it is working, and there's demonstration that it is working, but then you'll have other areas of the world who can see the value of the technology, but they don't quite yet know how to get there. And I often say that people tend to understand a new thing through the lens of an old thing. And that old thing can oftentimes be what's limiting you to be able to sort of reach into the possibilities of the new thing. In this case, that's immersive tech.
Okay, thank you. The voice of the future. So, thank you, Tyler. Yes.
To add to that.
Sorry. One thing, Philip. We don't have too much time because I don't know if we are going to have 5, 10, or 20 minutes. So, okay, go ahead, but please.
I just wanted, just a topic
please.
About a lot of people.
Because then we will have the opportunity to have a round for everybody. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, some people have been asking about 5G and XR, and mobile is my kind of topic, basically. So, and of course, it's Julie's as well, this whole 5G kind of network thing. What I find incredibly annoying is that industries like automotive, military-grade stuff, you have ad hoc 5G mobile edge networks where you can pump so much data down the line that is unavailable to like single educators that we can use, proper data to send down the lines to give, the next generation a chance to like absorb some data. I think that the 5G will make a crucial difference if we can get the proper networks involved to, provide these, ad hoc networks that are based around, a campus or what have you. I think the mobile side of things is hugely important when it comes to actually gaining accessibility to education.
Okay, thank you, Philip. We are going to have a round, and if we have time, we can start our jam session, okay? So we go to Florence, please, in 2 sentences, how you see the future in how you wish to be the future for the next 5 years.
No, I'm talking from Latin America, so what I wish is that more people could have access to technology. Perhaps as I told before, I'm a step behind, but that is what's happening right now. It's very difficult for schools to get access to this kind of technology. So what I hope is that this could be for all, and also to have like more ways to teach with these tools. But we first want to talk about how we can get in schools with these devices and with these solutions. It's like the first problem that we have here.
Absolutely. And Paula, your wishes for the next 5 years?
I too want to see more technology in schools, but I see it a little differently as far as I don't think books will ever go away. It's been proven that for your brain health, for learning, the actual physical thing of picking up a book is so important for neuroplasticity. But I see a new way of teaching kids, creating new communities, but the schools need the technology to be there. And I see us bringing in amazing speakers from all around the world, showing up at a small rural town school by Zoom or however we're going to do it. And I see huge new communities and a new way of teaching.
Absolutely. Heather, please, your words about that, your perceptions, your feelings, your ideas.
Well, thank you. I think that a lot of what we're talking about, and I saw Ashira in the chat had written something about learning, and I think that learning is about passive or active engagement was, I think, her question. And this is what we have the opportunity to do in the future is understanding learning is always experiential. The actual world will always be bigger than the virtual and augmented world that it lives inside of. And so how much of your sensory apparatus can be engaged in learning. And that's why, navigating a digital book, for example, is a completely different experience than navigating an actual book where you have spatial recollection. I remember a story that was on the left-hand side in the bottom paragraph. So really the hybrid experience going from expanding on the experiential potential of actual space and then leveraging the accelerated way for empathy and storytelling in virtual and augmented space, I think is the future. And of course we need technology, but we also need stories to drive the demand for technology. And we're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, please. Go ahead.
Sure. So one of the things that I see taking place, and one thing that I'm trying to foster too, is the relationship of business and education coming together to support that and close that skills gap. I think it's really important that especially higher education takes a look at the communities that they are in and start to partner with companies who need to invest in the skills of the upcoming graduates within the community, and working together in a hackathon model of trying to explore the digital transformations of all the companies, even starting off with manuals. How many user manuals are there in companies, and taking those and helping students understand how to transform them into a digital component about that particular industry. I think that union is something that we've never seen it before. Business and education, they didn't work together. Don't know why not, but now it's time to, right? And, working together to build up, the skill sets, the XR skill sets that are needed to move into the different industries and deal with the different technologies, having partnerships of this magnitude of not only financial support, but guidance and learning together, again, collaboration of what a new education system is going to look like.
Absolutely.
And
this is really very...
Julie won't say this about herself, but I will. But like what she's doing specifically, in terms of making tool sets to make it easier for people to get involved in the technology. It's kind of what you're saying, and specifically from what you're doing. But it really is like just being able to sort of break down the barrier of that you need to be a Unity or Unreal designer developer in order to be able to even get into sort of how do we leverage the content in our right now scenario? How do we use it, even if we're not using a head-mounted display? How are we leveraging spatial relationships and the display of this information, even on a computer screen, where we're putting the tool sets in the hands of the educators, instead of trying to get the educators to figure out how to go and hire a VR company somehow with their school and make content. It doesn't work. And so we have to put the information, the capabilities, make them simpler and easier to access, and use the technology in a more ubiquitous, sort of thinner layer at broader scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tyler.
Well, I would like to share for a while an experience that is really a passion from me, and I can see the guitar from Tyler every time there. Yes, the project will be released tomorrow. Is the music with 5 senses, and this is an amazing history that was put on my table by the International School of Music of Reina Sofia in Spain. And the idea was how to engage the students. The music that the students, the kids are hearing today, it's really impossible for me. So, and they said, okay, how we can engage the students with classical music. And they give us the opportunity to record a live session with music about Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and Respighi. Take the note, Respighi, an Italian music, which is really amazing. If you have passion, if you love music, then we say, okay, how we can put it in a VR environment in the way that we can engage kids between 13 and 17. It's really a challenge. These kids are thinking another way, another different histories. So the thing is that we create 20 small histories of 2 minutes each, where you can, in every song, you have a small history about Russia, putting in the context of the music, So at the end, and there are some games inside the film, and some tricky games in the way that we try to engage the student every second, and at the end of the session, they will love music as they never imagined before, So it was really tough. You cannot imagine how many people was working on that. We were working with 3D images, recreating old Asian palaces, recording the session with ambisonic sound. So when you put all this content together, it's incredible how complex it is. But when you put it on the glasses, then you are living something that you cannot live in another way. So this is the idea about storytelling. You can create stories that you cannot reproduce in a computer, in a cinema. So you can use all these tools to create value for the students. Well, we are talking about music and art because is the topic, but you can do it in another way. Yeah. So I think we can make another round, because we are still on, and I'm really happy about that. We have still 100 people watching us, so I think they are very. Won't let me back in. Oh, Philip, please try to jump. You want to say something? Please join us. Okay. So, okay.
Carlos, I think
now
that's
it's a jump session. Yes, it's jump session. So open the mic, jump to the stage and say whatever you want, please.
No, Carlos, I think that what is interesting, what you are saying, is that it's very important to think the content and to really make the students participate like in an active way in the story, just like the case you were mentioning, because that is what learning is about, to be in part in an active way, and that is a huge advantage of these technologies.
Absolutely. I can tell you one thing that we forgot when we are creating some kind of content is passion, soul, emotions, perceptions, how you can transmit all these feelings, okay, to the one is put in the headset, the device, or wherever, This is crucial. It's in the way when we talk about engage within that somebody that put the glasses is, wow, no, believe me, no, this is really bored if the content is not like this, This is why I said, okay, think about these small experiences where you can recreate amazing ideas and you can put it in different contexts, okay? And this is really, and one thing I want to point something about what Julie said, which for me is absolutely crucial. So if the teachers are not trained in soft skills, they are not going to understand a word about technological approaches. They are not going to understand a word about VRAR, the differentials, and the value for the students. They only see the TV with the glasses and say, wow, this is amazing, but nothing else. They cannot understand the value, And this is important.
There's actually a term for that, Carlos. It's called humanics.
Yeah.
Right? It's understanding the technology, it's understanding the relationships, it's understanding the data capture, and everything that's going on in the background. So it's really important. That's a new word that needs to be accepted and understood, and from both sides.
And also we have to move forward the wow effect about these technologies and really create a value for the value content for the students. It's not about how amazing it is to try on a glasses or a devices. It's about really making a learning process valuable.
The UX and UI design, that engagement, and during the attention economy, how do we get that, and how do we keep them interested and make it a fluid experience that's enjoyable and that's memorable?
Yeah, Paula, please.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, no, so we've been actually playing around with how to take our augmented reality and bring it to a classroom in a seamless way so you don't have the distraction of phones, of iPads. And it's again, it's all about rethinking how we're delivering the content and also what we're asking of people. Because it's very easy just to, do a VR thing. I was asked to beta test a VR experience. It's supposed to be about chemistry. But the problem was the blend between the entertainment and the education was 99% entertainment and hardly any education. And we really need to get a blend of like the technologists and the educators who really understand what it takes to teach somebody and how to keep their attention without pandering to them. The kids loved it. This beta test, this project the kids absolutely adore it. Well, yeah, but in reality, it's not really delivering what they're saying it's delivering. You're pacifying the kids, but you're not really providing the education.
Yeah. Philip, I can see you in your eyes. You want to say
Philip is
something.
back.
Hello, Philip.
Welcome back.
Back in the
Another man
Back in the dark
from.
side.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Well, Philip was trying to say something about digital humans in the chat.
You had a question about this panel about being 2030 and looking forward. And
yes,
I think about what has just come before with what started with Mika and Magic Leap, and now we see with Unreal Engine and their metahumans and the whole digital personas or virtual beings that are coming into play. And when you add a layer of 5G and a touch of AI, we have not just personal assistants, we have personal tutors, personal digital tutors, something that you can't get COVID from, and someone that you would be comfortable having your child being taught by. I mean, it's complete science fiction, but are we really that far away from it?
Well, how far do you think we are, though? I think we're further than we think, because so far everything that's talked to me is either very creepy, or whoever's setting it up just doesn't understand people.
That's true. I mean, you've got all these like cautionary tale videos of what was that? The ones from the guy from Leap Motion, where he designed stuff about hyper reality, and then the father that had a memory of his lost child as an augmented persona. You always have these cautionary tales, but I think they're funny, but are not funny, to be honest. But I think with a little bit of care and attention, then the scariness of AI should be manageable with all the right people on board talking about managing it properly anyways.
There are also, it is oftentimes what happens when we look at, especially with immersive technology, because it's so easy to connect it to so many different futuristic capabilities. We oftentimes are so willing to be really creative and inventive about what is going to happen 8 to 10 years from now, and almost fully unable to see how it's going to help us 8 to 10 months from now. And it really is, I agree with what's being said in the chat, just around curriculum and around educators' education. Really just like thinking about, okay, if we think about the value propositions that immersive technology provides, sure, we're certainly not going to replace books in the next, bit of the future. But what we can do is recognize what is really valuable about using this technology. And it's things like we can deliver students into the awareness, the entire embodied cognition awareness of an entirely separate cultural group across the globe. Before you teach facts and figures and data and things like that you teach connection and engagement to cultural groups around the world. And that can certainly aid in the educational process. But even just starting very small like that with a single application, single use of the hardware, or even not even adopting fully into head-mounted displays, but starting to sort of learn how the use of virtualization doesn't necessarily replace everything that we're doing. It just augments it. There just tends to be this real contentious, like this or that scenario. And really, it's both. And there are really easy ways for us to start real small and get educated on the value propositions of using virtual, and to work programs, even if it's at the individual teacher level, working in and figuring out ways to sort of use the simple sides of the technology to create value, to then show that this technology should be used curriculum wide. But at the same time, there are also many efforts, and people have talked about in the chat, about sort of reaching out at the sort of Department of Education level, at the top tiers, and really trying to explain, okay, instead of requiring that individual teachers and individual programs figure out ways to set up immersive technology, this should be top down. This should be a level of access that is where there is curriculum changes afoot already, where we're changing entire systems into the use of maybe not VR specifically, but just immersive and spatial technologies. So, I mean, I genuinely think that the technological capability is definitely already here. It's just highly underutilized, or we're trying to solve too many of these larger systemic problems with it, and we're overlooking the sort of right now capabilities of the tech.
Yeah. And this is one of the, I think this is one of the barriers, how we can break the rules and how we can jump to the organizations to explain, not the benefits, no, how to change the rules, which is very, very difficult. Because when you talk about the curriculum, we are talking about, it's a black power. Sorry, it's not black because black. It's a black power, like the power of the editors, the publishers, is very, very, very strong, and they are very powerful, connected to the administration. And this is a big business because they can get money like this, because and this is very strong because they don't want to change the curriculum, because then they have to change the books. So, and this is an experience that we faced during many years in Spain. We have been trying to change all these rules from the industry sector, trying to change the rules. But then you have to fight against Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, and very, very strong organizations around the world that are not interested in this kind of technologies, So the thing is how we can jump to these states, because in the other hand, we have, and nobody wants to talk about that, we have Facebook and Oculus, which is like another barrier, So what are your ideas? And very simple, because we have here we have a very, very crucial let's say barrier or circumstance, like in South America, but it's the same problem in Africa and a lot of regions. A lot of people is talking about 5G. 5G, where in 1% of the world or 2% of the complete world of the industry, if we want to use the technology to democratize the world, we have to make it easy to be adapted all around the world. So how you can see, Florence, because it's really complex, the situation in South America, as in Africa, and in a lot of countries around the world, How you can see it, because I can see that many times the big publishers from Spain are pushing a lot, and they are making a lot of power in the region and with the governments, and
Yes, as I told you, I think that here we want to push. I'm working in augmented reality, so perhaps it's more easy to implement this kind of technology in schools because you only need a mobile device, and that perhaps is an advantage for educational institutions. But also we need to push forward the learning and the content, as I told before, to implement this in the curriculum. That is the part that perhaps is more difficult. And also to construct narratives in the topics that teachers want to work. That is not all the topics, perhaps. They really want, the education needs to work more in constructing narratives to take part in AR projects, I think.
Yeah, Julie, I think just between brackets, I think we have to work on that in our education committee, because we are always in the same, and we face always the same barriers, and it's very tough to see how I can manage, I can handle, how I can contact to the organizations to say that in that way we are going to be faced by the robots and the holograms, and we will continue talking about the same topics in 25.
You know what? I want to bring up one thing that we've run into a lot is we have kids that are very comfortable with technology, and then we have administrators and teachers not so comfortable. And it's designing your product so you can say to a teacher and administrator, we're actually going to make it easier for you. So to sort of like nudge them along this path, because we're not going to see it happen overnight. So we have to really look at designing our products in such a way we don't scare off people who are slightly technophobes, I guess, for a better word.
But I think that we also have to work in the barrier that how technology is making isolation in students. That is the big pain that teachers need to work, I think, right now.
Oh, yeah.
Julie, want to say
something?
Yeah,
I was just going to say one of the things that I think that we, education systems need to take on a platform where there can be online collaboration and multiplayer, and having that tool that you see the collaboration taking place, so that isolation is not even a consideration. I think that's one of the first things. But yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier on the businesses coming in, and I think governments are going to start to feel the pressure from the big corps, because there won't be that skill sets in there. And if we can invite those businesses into conversations with education, there could be some more pressure that's put onto that level above it. And then taking a look at technology itself. And okay, at what level do we need to have certain authorization to, VR into elementary schools isn't ideal yet, right? There's all sorts of questions on how long the kids can be in the headsets, and whether it's, cleaning and security and all of those things. Again, mobile, it's already there. They can already engage in it, and start to build up the steps and use VR for those case studies that it's best applied for. So there's a multitude of different things, but certainly finding those barriers and trying to figure out solutions to those barriers. That's always been something that we need to all share together to be able to put pressure on those authority points that we need to break the walls down on.
I mean,
Philip, yes.
To that point with Julie about having, big businesses approaching, to education to upskill the workforce and what have you. On the flip side of that, what is really in the creative industry, which I work in, you have everybody in there, whether you're talking about Unreal, Adobe, Apple, Google, they have all education programs to teach a developer community how to use their product. It's part of their business strategy. It's from the get-go. They've got this built into their systems. I mean, even last year, Apple just bought the Spaces guys that were from DreamWorks. That was a whole education VR platform that worked incredibly well when they pivoted away from LBVR. So I think the tech companies already see this education as a crucial part to building their creator communities. And creator communities are across the board with all these programs and software applications. What other businesses don't do is this, engaging their communities or their people, their workforce in some way.
I think.
Sorry, Tyler. Just a second. There are a lot of questions in the chat. The people is crazy putting a lot of ideas. So I think that. So thank you very much, guys, because I think it's really interesting. We had in the beginning only 15 minutes. I think we are close to 3/4 of hour. Well, we are still here, so nobody cut the line. so we can continue anyway. So I have to work all night long until tomorrow. So I'm happy. So please go ahead, Tyler.
I was just gonna say I think the tendency, and we this happens to us a lot as, you know, I spend my days, we make immersive content on a regular basis. And so what often happens is somebody will, I mean, proverbially come and, you know, knock on the door and say, okay, we want to make an immersive technology experience, a simulation or something like that. And it's really like the very first question that they sort of like, almost sort of like nervously ask is like, should we do this in VR or AR? And which headset should we use? And it's just like, there's so much focus on the end state of the delivery of the content and really not that much focus on the content itself and how it can be leveraged right now. I was just talking with W3C yesterday about the advancements in WebXR and just our ability to distribute content over the web. So without inventing a brand new system, using the web in its current form to leverage the value propositions of immersive technologies. Again, not focusing on making sure that we figure out a way to ramrod, you know, headsets into school systems right now before there's been any sort of adoption at any level. It would be silly. So what we really need to do, though, is decouple our awareness of immersive technology from the hardware and really honestly look into ways to start to integrate virtualized systems in current methodologies that are already working, like the web, and you know, and use those systems, figure out how they work well with students, figure out where they can be valuable to replace certain aspects of the educational process currently, and where the current process really shines out, and then taking those key learnings and then maybe sort of stepping in to immersive technologies into the various types of hardwares to test and try. But I think that we're not going to see this sort of adoption until we can recognize that immersive technology is more than headsets and more than sort of figuring out the logistics of how long people need to be in headsets and all that kind of stuff. We need to start at square one, which is the acknowledgement that communicating in space. I mean, we can all see with things like Fortnite and Call of Duty and all these massive multiplayer online games, just the ability to be aware of your sense of space inside a 3D environment, even if you're looking at it on a computer screen. You talk to any, you know, 10 to 15-year-old who's playing Fortnite and ask them to identify a location on the map, on a gigantic Fortnite map, and they'll be able to exactly tell you not only where it is, but how to get there. Why? Because we're delivering the content to their brain through spatial technology, and that allows them to enter into the content in a really meaningful way that's different from what they get when they just look at a page in a book or in something static, when they're involved in it. Sorry, go ahead.
I have to agree with you about the whole headset thing. I think when we design our products, we always design them so they will work with yesterday's phone. Not way old yesterday's phones and iPads, but we want to be able to bring our product to a vast majority of people. And the problem is too often we design for those headsets, we design for very expensive hardware. And no matter what happens going forward, you're going to have richer schools and I personally want to make sure all of our products can go in, is affordable and can be consumed by those poorer schools as well. And it's not only a matter of getting adoption, of staying away from this expensive stuff, but it's also understanding we want to make sure that we are including everybody in what we're doing. That when we recreate education using immersive technology, we're not pricing out poor schools. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, but
to Julie's point earlier,
partially agree, Tyler. I will talk about a real case, okay? In theory, with this project of Music in 5 Senses, we started to record it in 4K for 3D videos, okay? The quality was amazing, the ambisonic sound, but then we had the headset, because at the end you have something to deliver your product, okay? And then start the problems with the headset. First, the price. Second, no 5G, whatever, so everything has to be installed here. So we reprogram the complete project because the performance of the headset, this is Pico G2K4, so it's not bad, okay? And this is for a real project. At the end, we have to reprogram everything, which it goes 2 months again. We have to re-render all the videos because the amount of data of the videos was so high. So at the end, when you are going to deliver a product, you need to start from the very beginning to understand the formats, the interfaces,
Exactly.
the interaction, which is very important, okay? Because when you talk about education, there are 3 levels which are very important in this pedagogical approach that somebody was putting in the chat. First is you have to explore the environment to understand where you are, okay? Then you have to discover what's happening, and then you have to interact. If you don't interact and you cannot see all around you, because for me, WebVR is, well, it's a platform, but it's something very old. I've been working with something similar to WebVR 20 years ago, okay? But this immersion as a concept is another thing. Immersion is that you are inside the sound, the touch, the perceptions, the feelings, and this is something that you cannot get in a screen. Because the concept of the screen is that is like in a video game, you are God, you are managing everything, okay? But when you put the headset, you are the player, you are inside the world. So the roles are quite different. And when you are going to think about that, the thing is that where is the point of view of the user when I'm going to do that? Are they going to do something special? Are they going to discover the experience? Or just I'm going to tell an history like a film, you know? This is very important. So the storytelling is completely different. You need to interact, to discover. It's the only way for the students to be engaged. I want to be part of the history. I don't want that somebody tell me the history about Mozart, Tchaikovsky, or whatever. I want to understand the history because I was there 200 years ago. And I can tell you this, it happened to me. And this is, wow, this is really, so I can learn mathematics, philosophy, whatever, because then I can put in the context, the history, the real time, the interaction, and then I can understand, wow, I can understand the rules of the universe. If I change the volume, or if I change because I can see the distance, but interaction, so the rules about immersion are critical, are crucial, so we cannot put it outside, you know? Well, this is my point of view. I don't want, it's very important.
You're talking about embodiment. You're talking about embodiment. Like that the principle that you're talking about, you can see that principle active. I mean, it's very easy to see it active inside fully occluded virtual reality, but it's also easy to see it when you're delivering augmented reality at a human scale. Because what's happening is that you are actually taking in. It's like I could ask all of you, how far is the wall behind your head? You'd be able to tell me with almost relative certainty, because right now in the rooms that you're all sitting in, you have proprioception, your awareness of your sense of self inside the space. When you're inside virtual reality, you also have that. And so your body is actually turning on a whole host of other sensors that don't get activated when you're just reading. When you're reading, you're imagining, and that's amazing for so many things. But for learning, it can be really difficult to insert the human imagination into the context of the learning. So when you put somebody inside the actual environment, they're taking in what they're seeing and experiencing, but not just with their eyes and their ears, with their entire system of senses.
Yeah.
And that embodiment allows them to understand the content in a different way, in a way that actually pads it in their brains as an episodic memory, as in you created an entire episode when you did it. So you remember things like, oh, when I was performing on stage, I remember how hot those lights were and when I started sweating and how close people were to me. Like I remember the entire episode, not just the facts and figures of it. And this is one of the sort of core tenets of spatial technology. It doesn't matter how you deliver it, but spatial technology gives that.
But
And that is just something that we don't really, in our current educational systems, we don't really leverage because we haven't, and not because we haven't wanted to, we haven't been able to, because we didn't have a format to deliver a sense of space to people while they're learning at the same time, except for in the lab or in the field.
Tyler, I want to bring up.
Sorry, go ahead,
I want to bring up something you brought up, and I agree with you that oftentimes immersing yourself into something gives you a better feel for what's going on. But there are some pieces or some things when you think about it. So if I take a classic piece of literature or any book and read it, okay, in my mind, I create those characters. Those characters and what's going on in my mind is going to be very different than yours. And it's an interesting thing to think about, that what we're doing is now we're going to, if all our kids are learning this way, the creator's vision of what it is now what the learner is going to know, versus when you just read a book or you read something, your mind is creating some of those pictures.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Like, for example, and I use this often, I always have it right here, but like this book series, The Wheel of Time, this is one that you definitely want to read, right? I want to read this because when I read this, it causes my brain to imagine all kinds of things, and that is so fun. But when we're talking about, like, if you're talking about trying to explain geometry to somebody,
right,
and it is factual based, and that you want them not to imagine scenarios geometrically that would be inaccurate, so as to take away from the speed at which they could actually comprehend the information. There are certain elements. I'm not saying that immersive technology is the end all be all for all content, but for so much of learning, it's so critical that there is a shared context between the instructor and the student. And that shared context is oftentimes intruded upon by the imagination itself. And so while the imagination is beautiful, and believe me, I think amazing things about our ability to imagine, but from a learning context and a learning scenario, what we really want to do, I would say, is to try to standardize that context as much as possible so that we can know how to comprehend and level up. So I think there should be a balance always with anything. I think a balance between familiarity and novelty is perfection. But I really think that what is powerful about immersive is that you can in fact remove the need, your need to imagine is so that you can create a spatial context and awareness of the book. It's why you never like the movie. Because you're literally going and seeing a visualization of somebody else's contextual interpretation. And so you can go and see the movie and go, right, it was so close to what I like, but it was like 5% off of what it needed to be. It didn't give me the thing that I should have gotten, but I got that from the book. Why? Because I was able to fully imagine it. Nobody was able to disagree with me.
I totally agree with everything you're saying and how wonderful this tool is for things like geometry, chemistry, etc. But I worry a little bit because you have those students they bring their imagination to the table even when learning stuff like geometry, and they're the ones that come up with the new theorems. They're the ones. So totally, it's something to keep in mind when we're creating this stuff.
I don't think it fully eliminates imagination. It just standardizes the context. I would actually argue that, or not argue, but I would actually contend that when you can allow somebody to have the confidence that they fully understand, that's what frees them to create. Once they get to the point of, oh, I get this, now I can think about how to apply this to myself and to my awareness. Now I can create. If you try to imagine, I lived down in South America for 2 years, and I went from not knowing any Spanish to fully fluently learning Spanish. I had to in 3 months. Now that period of learning Spanish, there was a ton of translation where I did not understand the standardized context, believe me. And it was very difficult to think of more complex things like human emotion and interaction and body language. I couldn't focus on that. But then I reached this point where I just started hearing people speak, and I wasn't thinking to translate it. I was just actually understanding it. And from that position of confidence, then I'm able to do more. then I'm able to press in and think more sort of critically and intellectually in ways that I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't understand the context.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, but
You muted Carlos.
entirely about you know, how education is a bit siloed. You know, we're talking about, you know, classic literature or chemistry and biology or arts and crafts, you know, or any kind of STEM area. Everyone is teaching because they have a passion for a topic. I teach in creativity because I love doing artworks and I've been doing creativity all my life. But you know, I'm never going to teach programming per se, only a subset of it. But this siloed business of education is somehow a hindrance to us moving forward in some cases. We don't even talk to each other most of the time. Most teachers don't even get along because their topics are so different. So how do we move forward together as an industry if we don't even get along pretty much per se? We have this, there was a comment earlier about the fuzziness of the word education in the first place.
Yeah, guys, you know, 1 hour time and we are still here. So that means that we really love it, you know. So it's something that is really amazing. But I know that the people wants to jump to other sessions. Well, I can see a lot of friends here are really crazy, typing a lot of amazing things, and I cannot do too many things at the same time. So I think it's good, good enough. We can still going on for 1 day. So you know, Julie, our education committee sessions
we could be
like
talking about this forever, never ending.
Yes,
Just
never ending stories. Yeah. So the thing is that, okay, I think it was really great. I really appreciate your passion, your enthusiasm. I think the good news is that we learn every day from the others, from our experiences, from our lessons learned. And this is the value of this organization. The value is the value of every one of you, you know, of every one of us. And this is really great. So I really love you guys. It was an amazing experience, you know. I think it was great because the people is jumping to other sessions, and I think we will try to make another session in June. I think this will be great. Okay, and
Fantastic.
then we can see how is the future. We will talk with Tyler again, the voice of the future that we hope that will come earlier. And I will ask to continue with this talk because I think it was really strong and we are a very good team. We will open to other guys, you know, but I think that it was really impressive. So I go from
thanks everyone.
ladies, Julie, Paula, Florencia, Tyler, Philip.
Sure. Bye.
Thank you very much. It was really great. I appreciate. I love you guys. Take care and be safe.
Right. Bye.
Bye everyone.
Talk to you.
Bye.
See everyone.
Bye.